Welcome back to the CyberPeace podcast, where we unpack the ideas shaping our digital world.
So from that point of view, how can you have a domain where you're transiting your 100% of your economy to a domain controlled by others? For me, it looks open and shut. Now, the people who foresaw that, the Western nations, they have changed education, introduced this concept of privacy, and over a couple of generations, that's become part of their culture. The Homo sapien has not changed since a time we have emerged between 300 to 200,000 years back. Since digital is something which a lot of our old people might not be that familiar with, which is where the gap is. A lot of youngsters understand digital better than the old people. Otherwise, usually in a population, it's the older and wiser people who know more about a particular subject.
Right.
Okay. In matters of digital matters, it is not so.
I'm your host Ayndri, and today we explore the intersection of technology, geopolitics, and national security with someone who's navigated all three domains. Mr. Pavithran Rajan is a military veteran, tech entrepreneur, academic, and global advisor at the CyberPeace Foundation. He has served as an advisor to the Ministry of Home Affairs and is an adjunct faculty at the Cybersecurity Research Center at Punjab Engineering College. He is also the author of Engaging China, Indian Interests in the Information Age. In this conversation, we talk about where India stands in the digital world, how we're approaching data sovereignty, and what happens when the internet begins to reflect the world's geopolitical divides. Welcome, sir. You've had a remarkable career across military, tech, policy. So I wanted to know what drew you to the mission of CyberPeace and how did your journey begin?
Okay, so like you said, I started off my career in the Indian Army. This was 88 when I joined the National Defense Academy. That was a slightly different world, which many people of your age might not be able to relate to, because it is in the 90s, India pivoted towards an open economy, and this world of IT started off. Before that, it was only government jobs.
Right.
And after 12th, the best thing you could do after 12th, and the earliest place where you could get through a UPSC examination was the National Defense Academy thing. And I was always attracted to the military, so that's how I joined the military. Then I got commissioned in a unit called the Sikh Light Infantry, which is a very famous regiment which has produced 3 chiefs. After 10 years, after Kargil, I decided, okay, this infantry life it's a young man's job, so I needed to do something else. And for a posting south in Bangalore, I opted for the intelligence corps. I like that, tenure, and that posting in Bangalore is what attracted me towards the cyberspace.
Mm-hmm.
And then, since I am a self-taught man in this entire domain, I applied military principles of thought into cyberspace, and I realized that this is not what exactly it appears to be, because the rest of India was looking at IT as an industry where you can get jobs.
Right.
But for me, I immediately recognized that there is an intelligence and a military potential to this domain, and I have continued ever since. And when I finally hung my boots, this was sometime in 2013, the Ministry of Home Affairs, because I'd worked with them, gave me this opportunity to work as an advisor there, and that's how I transited to policy making and thinking from a national perspective on what else can be done for this domain.
So you mentioned you applied military principles to the cyber domain. What does that mean?
Okay, the military is a science by itself, which many people might not realize, because when you purely look at it from a civilian perspective into the military, you will see people doing parades, you'll be seeing maybe some sort of military operations and some adventurous things which you see on movies. But you will realize, historically, you might have also heard that a lot of technology is flown out because of military. Because finally, the human condition is a competitive condition. We are a competitive ape, and we form alliances as of small tribes, larger nations, and then we compete with each other for an advantage over each other.
Right.
Okay, that is the history of humankind. Not a very pleasant history, but that is the reality of where we are. And there is a whole lot of science which is involved in how do you win that, war. a lot of philosophy.
Struggle for this.
A lot of philosophy, a lot of technology, so it's a huge body of knowledge which has got created. Even medical science, many other things which has come out, you will find all of it would have some origins within the military, sphere. So, applying principles of the military means when people see the internet as a place for a unified globe, I immediately see that who controls the space, who are the people who wield influence, how else can it be? Can it be used for a military purpose? Because surveillance, intelligence, etc., are typical, military spheres. And then there are concepts like information warfare, where you can create narratives, you can mold people and societies to a competitive advantage. So those are things which attracted me, and you can also even exploit it kinetically. So, what is a kinetic exploitation? You recently must have heard that the Israelis used pagers to target Hamas specifically among the huge population. So those are things which have immediately attracted me, because using ICT you can pinpoint your target. Okay, so when you look at the GPS, geographically you can pinpoint. But if you can plant a device on the person, then, and if it can be converted into a ICT, that would be the acme of war. So those are things which have, naturally attracted me.
So, and so you mentioned the internet. We have seen there is a narrative that the internet is changing and flowing into a state where what once felt like a shared global common is fragmenting. So, it can be called the Splinternet or balkanization of the internet. So what is your opinion on what is that, first of all? Second of all, how real is it?
Okay, so the origins of the internet and the ballads and the legends which from where, how it has originated and what was the need for this and why it is being placed as a commons, etc. A fascinating piece of work, because these ideals could not have happened out of thin air. These are concepts which have been created by very intelligent men over time. But then what happens in human history is, finally, the truth has a way of, historically, the truth has the way of poking out. That's again a human, history. That whatever you do, finally the truth will at some point come out. So, I've also heard that the internet, etc., can be a unifying force. It's a means for communication, etc. But there is this fascinating book called The Surveillance Valley, written by Yasha Levine. Okay, if you get your hands on the book, you will realize the internet was created for controlling populations in the American war in Vietnam. So, how do you control populations? So, in India, when you say population control, you immediately start thinking family planning. But for the Americans, they were not looking at family planning. They realized that if you have to subjugate the Vietnamese population, you have to know so many things about everything about them. Right? What are their ideologies? How do they think? Can you, ensure they think in a particular way? Who are they? Who are their connections? Etc. Etc. So, the origins of the internet, it's a DARPA invention. A DARPA is an organization similar to a DRDO. And by mandate, they create technologies which has got military use cases. So, that is the origin of the internet. A means for surveillance and a means for molding people and controlling populations. And other than the fact that it also can be used for many other things.
So commercial usage is more of a spin-off.
Yes, the way it was originally envisaged, it was definitely not envisaged as a commercial tool. It also has commercial uses. Okay, it was created as a military and a intelligence weapon, and it's got a lot of other use cases, and so many technologies have come out of that. So when you look at it from that sphere, this is definitely one of the greatest inventions of mankind. But greater the power of a particular tool, when it is weaponized, it can also be, something which is very frightening in its whole, the way you look at it.
So, should we be concerned about the fragmentation of internet networks, or what is your opinion on the narrative around this fragmentation?
Okay, so when you dispassionately look at humankind, it's natural to get attracted to an idea of one globe, one humanity, classless race where everyone can do what they would like to. It's a very attractive idea. And I definitely am a person who would like to. But then as a realist, I understand that what is the human history. I've explained to you how we are a competitive ape, how most of our history is all about warfare and competition. And the reality of the world today is we are based on nationalities.
Yes.
We have a passport. Our legal, all rights are from your own constitution. And if you have to travel from one place to another, it's based on you're not treated. If you are an American passport holder, so many places might open up for you. But if you're an Indian passport holder, that might not be the same. So that is the reality. And based on this reality, when you try to put an artificial concept of one domain which does not follow that principle, although it looks attractive, one has to look at who is controlling it, who is supposed to be the beneficiary of this.
Right.
And then you realize that it can also be an imperial framework. It can also be a colonial framework. And 2013, after Snowden has come out with his revelations on the true nature of this entire internet, anyone who doesn't aspire for a sovereign internet is either extremely,
optimistic.
Optimistic might not be the correct term. Anyone who does not, he's extremely stupid, is what I would say. Or he's an useful idiot.
Okay. So, we are seeing this push for data sovereignty, digital sovereignty, if that is an acceptable term to use. We have seen the Great Firewall of China. We have seen RUNET. We've seen, say, internet shutdown. So, different ways of organizing how the internet functions, how information flows. How do you consolidate that with implications of overreach, especially into user privacy?
Okay, so we as a nation is about 7+ decades old, and our current, the Indian Republic, although we are a very ancient civilization, but at this point we are comparatively a young nation. Our history is of colonial domination, and if you look at that history, you'll realize the people of this subcontinent were at one time much more prosperous and was one of the great nations of the world before this colonial rule. And when this colonial, and imperial power left India, we were reduced to one of the poorest people. Okay, we had lost a lot of our, we have acquired a lot of culture from our people who colonized us, but we did lose out a lot, and we realized that they ruled us by divide and rule, a policy of keeping people divided so that they can rule. Now, from that framework, when you examine why did we adopt a constitution, what was the reason for this adoption of our own rules that we have to self-govern, because if we allow anyone else to govern, they will exploit you competitively for their advantage, are all self-evident. So from that point of view, how can you have a domain where you're transiting your 100% of your economy to a domain controlled by others? For me, it looks open and shut.
Okay.
So then what is this nation for? If you do not create a framework which is under your own constitution, with all its limitations of ourselves, we're still a third world nation. But will we then become prosperous and reach where we have to reach under our own constitution, or will we still need imperial and colonial supervision? So I leave it to you.
So from a global perspective, it makes sense. What I'm meaning also to ask is, What does it mean in terms of overreach at a national level within the country?
Okay, so with internet also came, people foresaw how this interconnected computers between nations, they realized will reduce sovereignty between nations. Okay, reduce the sovereignty of nations. And they realized to protect that sovereignty, you have to introduce this concept of privacy. Okay, because with the coming of the internet, each and every part of your life can be reduced into zeros and ones. Each action, each expression, each thought also at certain points. Okay, in such a nation, if there is no privacy, then it's a very frightening concept of control by a power which can, intrude into each and every aspect of your life.
Right.
Now, the people who foresaw that, the Western nations, they have changed education, introduced this concept of privacy, and over a couple of generations, that's become part of their culture. They've also pursued education, educational norms. When they investigate other communities and other nations, they say that is not part of their culture. That's not part of their culture because it was not aware. See, culture is a product of policy. If a king decides a particular course of action from ancient times, over time that might become the culture.
Right.
Okay, so culture is not something. Culture is a product of geography, where you are. It's also a product of political action.
Right.
Okay, so when you recognize it from that perspective, today we have got a fundamental right for privacy. But whether laws are actually protecting our privacy is something which we need to, because we are also at the receiving end of, economic incentives, and it's also threats that if you do not align your laws to something which suits others, we will cut you off from here.
Right.
So, are you really able to protect that privacy of all your people? So, for protecting that privacy, there is a narrative that if the data is on clouds controlled by other countries, so your own government will not be able to intrude into your privacy, is a very limited way of looking at it. The correct way to look at it is that your government should be the first primary protectors of the citizens of our nation. And your laws, there is a division of powers in a democracy between the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. So there is a fundamental right. No fundamental right is absolute, including the right to life. But to violate a fundamental right, you have to have a judicial supervision. Otherwise, there will be executive overreach. So that has not happened in India, because of which, you say a lot of people believe that this data will be safer in another territorial jurisdiction. Is that the correct way to address privacy? Or is it the correct way to look at it and then make laws where executive can only intrude into your privacy when there is a proper due case and there is a judicial oversight to it? That would be the correct way to protect your privacy. So from that perspective, when you look at the very nature of Splinternet, the word itself, who has created this word? Definitely a person who wants to protect what is today existing, which is to their advantage, will create a word called Splinternet. I would rather that we call it a sovereign internet, right? Because all my rights, all my this is guaranteed by the state which we have created. We, the people, have created the state. We vote our people into power, and we need to hold them accountable. That's the only way right-thinking citizen can, understand what is your civic rights and what is civic responsibilities and what does it mean to be a citizen of a state. But in the reality of India, where a large portion of our people are illiterate and semi-literate, our first question should be, after 75 years, how come other nations have become literate and, they are aware, and how come we have remained illiterate is one of the questions you need to think about. So these are things with profound meaning. But one thing I can tell you, the Homo sapien has not changed since a time we have emerged between 300 to 200,000 years back. Okay, our basic emotions, our intrinsic motives remain the same, all DNA coded into us. That being so, an absolute power, you will realize, corrupts absolutely. This is our civilizational wisdom. To ensure that data of a whole nation can be shared with other nations who will now protect a third nation's interests is stupid. Now, if the data has to reside in our own nation, how do we prevent executive overreach? These are things which we need to sort out as Indians in India.
Would you say we need to first acknowledge that data sovereignty is a thing, and from there decide how we can protect our own citizens' data from extraterritorial actors as well as in a legislative capacity as well?
Okay, you're correct. If you believe that our nation should be sovereign, and all actions of our people till date after we have become a republic is to ensure that India needs to have autonomy. We have not joined any power bloc because we realized we are too large a nation to be, join a power bloc, and we cannot rise under another nation's, tutelage. When you look at it from that perspective, with the digital economy, being where it is and coming into your homes, I would counter question that: can you not have, digital sovereignty and be a sovereign, free citizen of a free nation? So let me rephrase it in this way. I would say that we need to rephrase that question.
Okay.
So definitely, if you ask people, you go to anyone in the street, do you want to be independent? They'll say yes. Do you want to be sovereign? Yes. So I take it that how many people realize what does it mean to be independent and sovereign is a different matter. Now the question is, how can intelligent people frame it in such a way that people get confused?
Independence is also a responsibility.
Of course, if you are an independent sovereign nation, you have to be responsible. And to be responsible, you have to prepare yourself. That way, if you are a slave, you have no responsibilities. Everything is your master's choice. So that's a very good way to put it. Do you want to be a digital slave, or do you want to be a digitally independent?
Right.
Slave, no problems. The master will take care of you. Being independent, a lot of problems. Then you have to be aware, you have to be educated, you have to act, you have to think. So you have correctly, directed me to the answer.
So, but what does that mean in terms of global cooperation, and context being, for example, CSAM, say offline betting? We've seen, especially in India, that there are offshore operators, who, and because of legislation in these areas still developing, this is a complicated issue. A person sitting in a completely different country can impact the safety and security of citizens of this country. So how do you, keeping digital sovereignty in mind, how do you also make sure that there are frameworks for collaboration to counter issues such as, say, crime?
Okay, so since digital is something which a lot of our old people might not be that familiar with, which is where the gap is. A lot of youngsters understand digital better than the old people. Otherwise, usually in a population, it's the older and wiser people who know more about a particular subject.
Right.
Okay. In matters of digital matters, it is not so, because it's a new subject. But the correct way to tackle this is to think about the digital from the physical framework. Have we as nations created frameworks to cooperate in the physical realm? We have a diplomatic corps, we have an Interpol, we have created all those frameworks. It's the same way it will happen here in the digital framework. The internet being sovereign or not being controlled by someone else is not going to change anything. And like you correctly said, in spite of a unified internet today, crimes happen. Have we been able to sort it out? No. So nothing is going to change when we create a sovereign controlled internet. Okay, sovereign internet, nothing is going to change. But we have to then cooperate with other nations for mutual benefit as part of common humanity and go ahead.
In the same way that we cooperate for, say, trade.
Yeah, trade,
which right now is
crime, international crime, everything, right?
Right.
Yes. So these are all fears which are created to ensure that the things don't change. Because the people who are beneficiaries of these are the largest corporations of the world. There's huge money to be made.
Yes.
They have unprecedented wealth creation which has got concentrated.
Right.
Do you think they're going to freely give it up all up? So there is your challenge.
So is there a role that these corporations can play?
The corporations, historically, if you look at it, are responsible to their shareholders for maximizing their profit. Correct? That is the role of corporations. And I don't think that is going to change.
No.
So they will purely pursue things which will maximize shareholder profit. So if you are a nation looking for a multinational to forego their profits for your national aim, as a nation which is being colonized and achieved independence, don't you think it's so stupid for us to even think in that way? How will they ever come to your this? They will try to exploit you. Their sole aim is, profits, maximizing shareholder profit. That is not our nation's aim. Our nation's aim is to protect our citizens and their interests. We will have to act. We cannot expect a multinational to come to our, but human history is all about the sheep, the wolf being disguised in sheep's clothing, okay, and the devil quoting from the Bible for another this. So these are all homiles to make you understand the dangers of the devious naked ape.
So in conclusion, what does cyberpeace mean to you?
That's a question I should ask you because you represent cyberpeace. But although war is a natural condition of human beings, we have the people do burn for peace.
Yes.
Because war is a horrendous state of affairs. And people have realized that the best way to avoid war is to arm yourself for war, so that there is a concept where you realize to go to war might harm you.
Right.
Correct? If you are undefended people, then an aggressor might realize that the harm to him to come and take you over is very less, so he will not hesitate. But if you are equally armed or even more powerful, he will calculate that this might not be the risk, and that is the reality of the world. So, as a concept, cyberpeace is a beautiful concept. We need cyberpeace without doubt. The only way we can guarantee cyberpeace, as per our history and our practical experiences, is prepare for war. And what does that preparation include? Ensure that you are a sovereign nation in the digital space. You have all means for resilience when others try to attack you under your sovereign capability. And if you are aiming for that, you will realize that you have to create your own capabilities. You cannot rely on MNC goodwill. As you speak, you can see what MNCs have done. They've all acted as per their own interests. Okay? So I hope that's an answer which you can take to the viewers.
Yes, that was lovely. We've had a great session with sir here. We've learned a lot. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, do share it with someone who's interested in the future of tech policy and global governance. And stay tuned, because we'll be back with more voices. Until then, thank you for listening.